The alarm shrieked across the command deck of Defense Station Alpha 7. Admiral Sthera's four eyes snapped wide as he rose inside his command pod, suspended within a cocoon of blue liquid that cushioned his vast form in weightless ease. For 3 millennia, no alarm had ever sounded within Velro's prime system. The heart of the Galactic Empire had never known fear, never known intrusion, never known war. Report, Xterra commanded, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone unchallenged for centuries. His thick, scaled flesh shimmered with irritation as junior officers scrambled into action. Complacent in its eternal dominance, too many effortless victories had dulled its edge. Admiral, massive contact detected near the system's outer rim, said Lieutenant Sexto, voice trembling. A vessel just exited hyperspace. It's massive, sir, Sthera brought up his personal display. What filled the screen drained the heat from his blood. Ship drifted there, black against the void like a weapon unsheathed. It spanned nearly 2 kilometers, unfamiliar and imposing. No markings. No signal. The surface was a dull gray that drank in light instead of reflecting it. Its shape was harsh, pragmatic, made for function, not art or honor. No ornament. No identity, Sthera muttered. Scan it. Full spectral sweep. Registry check. I want to know who made that thing. The station's scanners reached out across the gulf. But the data made no sense. The hull was composed of materials the Empire's science had never catalogued. Its power signature was alien foreign on every level. And worst of all, the Imperial database, encompassing 3,000 years of conquest, had no record of the vessel's design or origin. Sir, it's not. Responding to any hails, said Communications Officer Hexrun. We've cycled through all frequencies, all protocols, no answer. It's just ... hovering.
Zara narrowed his eyes.
In 2 centuries of service, he'd witnessed the fall of countless species. Some fought with courage. Others pleaded for mercy. All of them crumbled before Imperial dominance. But this ship was different. It projected silence that unsettled him. It wasn't fearsome by posture. It was fearsome by certainty. Captain Jake Morrison stood aboard the USS Defiance, arms clasped behind his back as he gazed out from the compact bridge. Unlike the sprawling command chambers of the Imperials, his was tight, purposeful. No space wasted, no need for grandeur. Just steel, purpose, and years of tested engineering, Captain. Sensors are tracking 57 hostiles inbound, reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hart from the tactical console. Her hands moved with precision over the glowing interface, forming a loose net. Big ones, each about triple our mass. Morrison nodded, unfazed. It was expected. For 2 decades, Earth's deep probes had watched the Empire, studied their doctrine, measured their pride. The Imperials had habits predictable. Ones. Encounter first. Attempt communication. Issue a demand. Then strike with overwhelming numbers. Any update from Earth? Morrison asked, his voice calm. Not knowing what came next didn't concern him, because what mattered wasn't how the enemy acted, it was how they responded. Transmission came in 18 hours ago, confirmed Communications Officer Dan Rivers. Admiral Brooks says Second Fleet is 6 months out. Until then, ... we're on our own. Captain Morrison let a thin smile flicker across his face. The Defiance hadn't been selected at random. Every soul aboard had been handpicked for this exact scenario. Isolation, pressure, and long odds. This crew thrived in it. They were veterans of Earth's corporate wars, brutal conflicts that had redefined the human art of war. They'd fought in city ruins and orbital scrapyards. They'd learned how to win not through numbers, but through grit, precision, and superior tech. Commander Turner status report, Morrison called out. Eyes still on the distant Imperial wall. All systems nominal, Captain, came the calm voice of Chief Engineer Alex Turner. Antimatter core is stable. Shields. At max output, weapons hot and standing by. Morrison nodded in quiet approval. The Defiance was humanity's answer to an uncaring galaxy. 20 years of rapid technological evolution had forged her. When that first alien probe had arrived hostile, unprovoked, it had annihilated 3 orbital platforms before Earth. Took it down, that moment became the spark. Humanity learned 2 things that day. They weren't alone, and they weren't welcome. Earth responded the only way it knew, how by building a weapon the universe wouldn't forget. Captain. Signal from the alien fleet, Rivers reported, his tone sharp. They're ordering us to surrender. Morrison listened to the translation. The alien admiral's voice was smug, dismissive, soaked in the certainty of a victor speaking to the defeated. The Empire had sat on its throne so long, it believed, itself uncheckable. But complacency was a kind of blindness, and Morrison planned to use it. "Respond, sir," Rivers asked. "Negative," Morrison replied. "Let them act first. I want to see what kind of teeth they've got." Admiral Zextara watched the intruding vessel, his frustration mounting with each passing minute. Never had a species ignored the Empire's demand for submission. Most responded within seconds, some surrendered, others pleaded, a few tried to flee, but none had sat motionless in defiance. "Deploy intimidation fleets," Zextara barked. "Full spread. Show them the face of Imperial strength." 50 colossal warships moved into formation, each a cathedral of destruction. Together, they formed a flawless wall of power, an array of particle beams, gravity lances, and quantum torpedoes that had razed worlds and erased resistance across 1,000 systems. "This fleet has conquered empires," Ixtara murmured. "They will learn fear," Sir Hexron reported. "The alien ship hasn't moved. No changes, they're just watching." Zextara stared at the tactical interface. The foreign vessel remained silent, its weapons charged but idle, not locked onto any target. It projected no panic, no hesitation. Just patience. Unsettling, deliberate patience. "Send a final warning," he ordered. 1 hour, they surrender, or they die. The message was transmitted with the full force of Imperial law. For millennia, it had broken enemy wills long before the first shot. The Empire did not bluff, but Captain Jake Morrison wasn't like any enemy the Empire had faced. He was human, and humans had evolved in the crucible of scarcity and violence. They didn't break easy. They adapted. They survived. When necessary, they bit back harder. 1 hour. That's what the Empire gave them. The minutes dragged like the last breath of a dying beast. Admiral Zextara floated silently in his fluid chamber, eyes fixed on the black vessel. It had not moved an inch since it appeared. It loomed there like a carved omen, indifferent to threats, untouched by fear, all around it. The Imperial fleet held formation in perfect readiness, and the Defiance remained still. 50 warships held formation, primed to unleash devastation at the Admiral's command. 30 minutes remain, Sir Lieutenant Sexto said, his voice tight with anxiety. Scales had faded to a pale, yellow, clear sign of distress. "For his species, the alien vessel still refuses to acknowledge our demands." Admiral Zextara narrowed all 4 of his eyes, staring intently at the tactical display. Something didn't add up. In 3,000 years of Imperial conquest, no species had faced their armada with this level of calm. By now, most enemies would be pleading for mercy or scrambling to flee. But this ship sat in perfect stillness, almost like it knew something the Empire didn't. "Initiate another deep scan," Zextara barked. "I want every detail, nothing hidden." Scanning beams swept through space again, dissecting the ship from every conceivable angle. The results were even more disconcerting than before. "The hull is composed of exotic materials unknown to Imperial science," reported Science Officer Vexen, scanning furiously. "We're also registering a massive antimatter signature, but it's not like anything in our archives. The energy output is off the scale." Xtara felt an uneasy chill ripple through his immense frame. Antimatter was unstable, volatile, extremely lethal. The Empire had abandoned its own antimatter projects centuries ago, branding them too dangerous to pursue. Only a civilization with unmatched control and genius level engineering could weaponize such energy safely. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison moved methodically around the bridge, observing each console and crew member. The crew moved like clockwork, efficient, composed. This wasn't the panic of a doomed mission. These were the practiced motions of people trained for this exact moment. "Status, Commander Turner?" Morrison asked, glancing at his engineer. "All green, Captain," replied Alex Turner from engineering. "Antimatter core stable at optimal output. Primary weapons armed. Secondary systems ready." Morrison gave a satisfied nod. The Defiance wasn't just a ship, was humanity's finest creation. Forged in the fires of desperation and war, it embodied everything humans had learned about surviving the impossible. Its systems had been tested under every conceivable stress until failure was no longer an option. Tactical assessment. "Commander Hart?" he asked. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hart scanned the targeting display, classic intimidation posture. "Sir, 50 vessels and a forward wall. Heavy emphasis on visual dominance. Based on scans, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, shield arrays. Impressive, but static. Looks like their designs haven't changed in centuries." Morrison let a grim smile curl his lips. Exactly what Earth's intelligence services had predicted. The Galactic Empire had grown bloated overconfident. Their technology had stagnated under the weight of pride and fear of change. The Defiance, by contrast, was the result of relentless human innovation and adaptation. Rivers. "Any further comes from the enemy?" Morrison asked, without turning. "Nothing since their ultimatum an hour ago," Don Rivers replied. "Internal chatter between their ships is increasing." "Sounds like confusion, sir." That made sense. Morrison could picture it. The Empire was used to predictable responses, panic, bargaining, or surrender. But humanity had rewritten the rules. Long ago, they'd learned to win against impossible odds in the crucible of their corporate wars, using tactics no alien commander had ever faced. "Dr. Phillips, how's our crew holding up?" he asked. Dr. Karen Phillips glanced up from her medical. "Display vitals steady across the board. Stress indicators elevated but within acceptable range." "They're ready, Captain." Morrison's chest swelled with pride. These weren't just soldiers, they were Earth's best. Every one of them handpicked for resilience, clarity under pressure, and unwavering resolve. They didn't just serve, they believed in the mission. Admiral Zaskestera watched the countdown clock, anxiety rising like static in his blood. 15 minutes remained. The alien ship had not replied, not moved, not even acknowledged the Empire's presence. It just lingered silent, unshaken, unmoved. "It's as if they're mocking us," Zaskestera muttered. "Orders, Admiral?" "Ask Weapons Officer Sexrill." "Begin charge sequence," Zaskestera snapped. "All ships prepare to fire. Target their propulsion and weapon systems. I want that ship crippled, not destroyed." "We must study its technology," the fleet responded. Instantly, particle cannons thrummed to life, charging with lethal precision. Quantum torpedoes armed within their silos. Shield grids rose to full power, encasing the armada in energy barriers designed to absorb retaliatory strikes. The offensive potential of 50 Imperial warships could obliterate a small moon. Admiral Bexcoin called out, alarm lacing his tone. The alien vesselet's spiking energy, a buildup unlike anything we've recorded before. Zaskestera stared at the tactical data. The alien ship was awakening, and its power was unimaginable. Energy levels were rising far beyond what should have been feasible for a vessel that size. "How is that even possible?" Zaskestera snapped, his voice edged with disbelief. "That ship is smaller than one of our cruisers. Where are they drawing that much power from?" "Unknown, sir," Vexen replied, eyes locked on the growing readings.
What?
"But if our scans are accurate, their weapon systems are vastly more advanced than anything we've ever encountered." Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly in the center of the Defiance's bridge, watching the Imperial fleet complete its attack posture. The ships were undeniably impressive, massive, sleek, bristling with weapons, but Morrison knew that impressive wasn't the same as invincible. For 20 years, Earth's brightest minds had dissected the Empire's technology. They had mapped its strengths, but more importantly, they had uncovered its flaws. "All stations, prepare for combat," Morrison announced, his voice cool and steady. "Remember your drills, and remember why we're here. Today we show the galaxy that humanity doesn't." "Kneel." Across the bridge, the crew answered not with cheers, but with focused, determined silence. They had trained for this very moment. They understood the risks, knew the odds weren't in their favor. But they also knew something else. Humans had a gift for doing the impossible. "Captain." 5 minutes to deadline, Rivers reported from his console. Morrison nodded. The Empire had chosen violence over diplomacy. They had assumed humanity would be just another species to crush. That miscalculation was about to cost them dearly. The timer ticked down, and the galaxy held its breath. The final seconds vanished. Admiral Zextara hovered his clawed hand over the fire control interface, pausing only briefly. The alien ship still hadn't budged. No message, no maneuvering, no fear, just silence and stillness. It loomed like a dark omen daring them to test it. "Time is up," Zextara growled. "All ships open fire. Destroy that vessel." And the sky erupted. 50 Imperial warships fired in unison. Space became a blazing inferno as particle beams tore across the void like burning lances. Each one carried power sufficient to vaporize reinforced fortifications. Quantum torpedoes streaked through the black, their warheads capable of ripping through planetary defenses. It was an overwhelming barrage, the kind that had reduced entire fleets to atoms. The storm crashed into the defiant sand. Then something happened, something impossible. The firepower of the entire fleet vanished on impact. The particle beams struck and scattered like raindrops against an unseen surface. Torpedoes detonated in flashes of harmless brilliance, their payloads absorbed or redirected. Where annihilation should have occurred, there was only light. "What?" Zixtara whispered, his 4 eyes wide in disbelief. That's impossible. Nothing survives that." On the bridge of the Defiance, Morrison stood steady, arms folded behind his back as he watched the display. A slow, satisfied breath escaped his lips. The ship's shield system had worked. Flawlessly, built from cutting-edge theories Earth had. Developed in secret, the shields didn't just resist enemy fire, they adapted to it. The Empire had never encountered energy redirection tech. It was their first lesson in humility. "Shield status, Commander Turner," Morrison asked evenly. "Holding at 98%. Turner confirmed from engineering. Minor impact, nothing significant." "Their weapons barely grazed us." Morrison gave a short nod. Earth scientists had reverse-engineered every fragment of Imperial tech they could scavenge. They'd broken down particle beams, tracked torpedo guidance algorithms, and reconstructed the Empire's targeting methods. Then they built defenses that rendered all of it obsolete. "Commander Hart," Morrison said, turning to tactical. "Target. Their flagship, just one shot." He narrowed his eyes. "Let's show them what we've been building." "Let's show them what real weapons can do," Morrison said. Lisa Hart's fingers moved across her tactical interface, bringing the Defiance's primary weapon online. It's the antimatter cannon, humanity's boldest and most dangerous invention. To life, a weapon capable of channeling the fury of a star into a single, devastating beam. The Empire had dabbled in antimatter centuries ago, only to abandon it, labeling the technology too volatile, too uncontrollable. They had been wrong. Target acquired, Hart confirmed, antimatter cannon fully charged. Morrison locked eyes on the Imperial flagship displayed on his view screen. A behemoth of war, 3 times the Defiance's size, plated in battle-worn armor that had shrugged off centuries of warfare. It was the crown jewel of the fleet, the symbol of the Empire's strength. Its very name, Eternal Dominion, echoed invincibility, but today It would discover the chasm between myth and reality. Fire, Morrison ordered. The antimatter beam fired. A needle of white-hot annihilation streaked across the void. Faster than anything visible, a focused line of fury and physics that tore through space. In less than a second, it crossed the distance and slammed into the Eternal Dominion's shields with the force of a starburst. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. The Imperial shielding system, praised across the galaxy, collapsed without resistance. The energy barriers that had deflected meteors and withstood fleet barrages imploded like soap bubbles against the pressure of absolute energy. The beam didn't stop. It cut into the ship's armored hull with surgical precision, carving through metal, compartments, and energy cores like a blade through vapor. The strongest alloys known to the Empire offered no resistance. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zextara had a single heartbeat of comprehension, just long enough to understand. What was happening? That his mighty warship, the heart of the fleet, was being destroyed in a single instant by a weapon he could not even classify. That the Empire's 3,000 years of dominance had just ended. Then the Eternal Dominion vanished in a blinding eruption. The flagship burst apart in a radiant detonation of light, flame, and shredded metal. A fireball of antimatter and reactor energy consumed the sky, sending a shockwave through space so fierce that nearby Imperial ships scrambled to raise emergency shields to avoid being caught in the blast. The pride of the Empire dashed gone, just gone. Across the Imperial formation, silence. 50 warships drifted, stunned, their weapons quiet, their captains frozen. The Eternal Dominion. The vessel that had led campaigns across 3 galaxies had been obliterated with a single shot from an enemy they didn't understand. The strongest ship, strongest shields. Erased. Admiral Zextara is gone, whispered Communications Officer Hexron, barely audible. The flagship is completely gone. Second in command, Commander Yexther stared at the view screen, watching as the expanding debris field shimmered across the void. He couldn't process what he was seeing. No weapon in the galaxy should have been capable of such destruction. Nothing the Empire had ever encountered could match this. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a revelation, a terrifying one. All vessels, retreat to minimum safe distance, Yexer ordered, his voice hollow. Do not engage. Repeat. The order echoed through every ship in the Imperial fleet as they began to pull back. Crews, still reeling from the loss, moved without direction, minds fogged by disbelief. For the first time in 3 millennia, Imperial forces were retreating from a single ship. The blow to morale was immediate and profound. Captain Morrison stood silently on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the retreat unfold. Satisfaction flickered across his features, though it carried no joy. What they'd done had been necessary, but not pleasant. He took no pride in destruction. But the Empire needed to understand one thing. Humanity would not cower before superior numbers. Status report, Morrison called out. No damage to report, sir, Turner replied. All systems are fully operational. Antimatter cannon is already cycling for recharge. Morrison gave a slight nod. The Defiance had been built for moments like this, designed for endurance, with systems layered in redundancy. It was meant to survive, to fight longer than any enemy expected. Commander Hart. Morrison said, open a channel to the fleet. All frequencies open, she confirmed. Morrison stepped forward, voice sharp and unwavering. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth's Defense Force. You arrived with threats. You attacked without provocation. Now you've witnessed the cost of threatening humanity. The message beamed across space, transmitted to every vessel in the Imperial formation. Crews, still stunned by the destruction of their flagship, listened in silence. We did not come seeking war, Morrison continued, but we will not bow to an empire that thrives on fear. You've ruled through intimidation for 3,000 years. That ends today. Commander Yexther stood frozen on his bridge, Morrison's words echoing through the command deck. Human's confidence was unsettling and deserved. One ship, smaller than a cruiser, had destroyed the pride of the Imperial Navy. What else were they capable of? Sir, his tactical officer asked quietly. Orders? Yexter didn't respond. Immediately, his eyes were locked on the human vessel still floating calmly before them. Its shields hadn't flickered. Its weapons had only fired once. Yet that one shot had changed everything. It was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. Send a report to Imperial Command, Yexer ordered. Inform them that we've encountered a species with technology vastly superior to our own. Tell them the Eternal Dominion has been lost, and that we require reinforcements immediately. The transmission shot into hyperspace, destined to shake the very heart of the Empire. A new force had risen, and they were not here to kneel. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Morrison stood calmly, watching the distant fleet hesitate but keep its distance. The first clash was over, but the war had only begun. The Empire would not accept humiliation lightly. It would come again stronger, angrier, more prepared. But Earth would be ready. Humanity had no interest in conquest. But they had no intention of surrendering either. The galaxy had shifted. The old rules were gone, as the new age had arrived. The emergency session of the Imperial Council was unlike anything held in centuries. Tension rippled through the chamber. As Supreme Chancellor Vixtel took his seat at the center of the marble dais, his hands trembled, not from age, but from the unfamiliar sting of fear around him. The most brilliant minds of the Empire reviewed the unthinkable. One alien ship. Chancellor Vixtel growled, his voice brittle with disbelief. One ship. Destroyed the Eternal Dominion against 50 of our best vessels. Defense Minister Sexron clutched a trembling data slate. The reports are verified, Chancellor. The enemy ship possesses technology beyond anything we've cataloged.
Its
weapons penetrated our strongest shields instantly. Its defenses resisted our full barrage with no visible damage. Vixtel's fist slammed into the table. 3,000 years of dominance and done by a single unknown species. Across the chamber, murmurs erupted. Panic, confusion, rage. The Empire's power had always rested on three pillars. Unmatched technology, overwhelming force, and unshakable belief in their superiority. Now all three were fractured. What do we know about them? Asked Science Minister Hexquin. Very little, Sexron replied. They identify as the Earth Defense Force. Their vessel is named the Defiance. They speak our language perfectly. Likely they've been studying us for some time. Spies, spat General Kexler. They've been watching, learning our weaknesses while we remained blind. Their existence was no longer secret. Supreme Chancellor Vextel rose from his elevated throne, his towering frame casting jagged shadows over the chamber's cold metal floor. His voice rumbled with fury. Then we will teach these humans what it means to defy the Empire. Mobilize the core fleet. Every warship, every weapon, every soldier we possess. I want that vessel reduced to atoms. The core fleet was the Empire's deadliest force, its hammer of judgment. 500 warships, each a marvel of destruction forged across generations of conquest. These were not patrol ships or regional enforcers. These were legends in metal, armed with the most devastating weapons known to the galaxy. They had never been defeated, had never even been truly tested. The core fleet enforced Imperial dominance across 12 entire systems. Chancellor, are you sure? Asked Defense Minister Sexron, his voice unsteady. Deploying the core fleet against a single target may appear excessive. Vextel's eyes narrowed with fury. They annihilated our flagship. They disgraced our fleet before the eyes of every species watching. This is not excess. This is justice. Let the galaxy witness what happens to enemies of the Empire. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the ship's communications suite, arms crossed, listening carefully to the intercepted Imperial chatter. The enemy was mobilizing. Their elite central fleet was en route. They're doing exactly what we expected, Morrison muttered. How soon until they get here? He asked, turning to Intelligence Officer Sam Parker. Approximately 6 hours based on hyperspace trace readings. Parker replied, 500 ships total, Captain. It's the most extensive deployment the Empire has ever undertaken.
Morrison
Nodded. The number was staggering but not surprising. The Empire still believed in the old doctrine. Overwhelming force would always bring submission. They hadn't learned from their first defeat. They thought another fleet of Inalarja. One would solve their problem. Commander Hart, tactical readout? Morrison asked. Lisa Hart's eyes scanned the stream of data cascading across her console. They're bringing everything, sir. Full array of ship classes, dreadnoughts, capital destroyers, assault cruisers. Their flagship is identified as the Infinite Supremacy. Twice the size of the vessel we eliminated earlier. Weapons include upgraded particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and a new gravitic-based energy system. She paused, frowning. They've also modified their shields. Seems like they studied our last attack. Morrison allowed himself a grim smile. They're learning. But they're still playing the old game. The Empire still believed that. More firepower and tighter formations could fix anything. What they didn't realize was that humanity had stopped playing by conventional rules centuries ago. Commander Turner, Morrison called, turning toward engineering. Status of R. Experimental systems. Chief Engineer Alex Turner looked up, his face lit with restrained excitement. All systems operational, sir? The gravitational disruptors are fully charged. Quantum torpedoes are locked and loaded. The antimatter spread platform is online. And standing by, a quiet confidence swept through Morrison. The Defiance wasn't just another warship. It was Earth's prototype, a platform built to test the bleeding edge of military science. Where the Empire wielded brute force, humanity brought ingenuity. They had developed systems that didn't just push technological limits, they rewrote them. The enemy was about to learn what human innovation truly meant. Lieutenant Rivers. Morrison said, prepare a broad-spectrum transmission. All frequencies. Maximum range and signal strength. Ready, Captain, replied Dan Rivers. From the come station, Morrison took a breath, then stepped forward. His words would speak not just for the Defiance, but for Earth, for every species that had suffered under the Empire's heel. It's Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. To the leaders of the Galactic Empire, we offer you one final opportunity for peace. The message surged across hyperspace, relayed by hidden satellites and signal amplifiers. It arrived at Imperial Command within minutes. Supreme Chancellor Vextel listened in silence, his expression darkening with every word. We are aware of your core fleet, Morrison's voice continued. We know you've mobilized 500 warships to annihilate us. We do not seek conflict, but we will not surrender. Stand down your fleet, and we will negotiate terms. Continue your attack, and you will face the consequences. Vextel's roar of rage shook the council chamber. Arrogance, unmitigated arrogance. They dare dictate terms to the Empire. Supreme Chancellor began Science Minister Hexwan with cautious diplomacy. If they truly possess superior technology, perhaps a peaceful resolution would be wise. Peaceful? Vextel spat the word like poison. They destroyed our flagship. They shamed our warriors. There will be no peace until every last human is crushed or enslaved. He turned to his generals. Send word to Fleet Admiral Kexter. No mercy. I want that ship reduced to slag and its crew captured. For questioning, let the galaxy witness what awaits those who defy us. Fleet Admiral Kexter stood aboard the Infinite Supremacy, the pride of the Imperial Core Fleet. Over 4 kilometers long, layered in reinforced alloy, and mounted with enough weaponry to reduce a planet to rubble. Of Imperial power around him, the rest of the fleet surged forward in tight formation. Streaking through hyperspace like a tidal wave of destruction, Admiral. We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel, reported Communications Officer lexohan.kex. Tur listened, a faint smile curling his lips. They still want to talk. One ship against 500, and they think they can set terms? Either they're bold or delusional. What are your orders, sir? Asked his tactical officer. We proceed as planned, Kexter replied. The Empire didn't rule for 3 millennia by bowing to weaker species. When we arrive, we'll remind the galaxy why we are eternal. The fleet pressed on through hyperspace, confident in its power, but far from their sensors, other forces. Stirred Captain Morrison watched the Defiance's tactical map with a measured gaze. Bright dots representing Imperial vessels filled the outer edges of the system, converging like wolves on a lone target. They still believed the Defiance was alone. Captain on confirmation from all units in the outer system, reported intelligence. Officer Sam Parker. All strike teams are ready. Morrison nodded. The trap was set. The Defiance had never been the true weapon, merely the lure. While Imperial attention remained fixed on the one ship in their sacred core system, humanity had infiltrated deep behind enemy lines. 20 years of observation, 2 decades of careful deployment, and now every piece was in place. Send the signal, Morrison ordered. Initiate Operation Prometheus. Encrypted orders shot across space, received by cloaked human vessels hidden throughout Imperial territory. Buried satellites powered on. Deep space platforms activated weapon systems. The Empire's core fleet wasn't arriving for a battle. It was walking into an ambush. The age of uncontested Imperial rule was about to end. The core fleet dropped out of hyperspace in unison, flooding the space around Velrose Prime with mass and metal. 500 warships glistened in the starlight, bristling with weapons. Ready to end the human threat in one final blow, Fleet Admiral Kexter surveyed the human ship through the viewport of the infinite supremacy. The Defiance still hung alone. In the void, unmoving, as if unaware of the force now gathered around it. Pathetic, Kexter sneered. They stayed to watch their own death. The Defiance looked insignificant compared to the vast Imperial dreadnoughts. A single light in a sea of leviathans. Admiral, we're getting another message from the human vessel, said Lexohan.Kexter. Grinned. Let them grovel. I want to hear their pleas before we turn them to dust. Captain Jake Morrison was not pleading. His voice came across the Imperial comms with the same unwavering calm that had carried him through the entire encounter. Fleet Admiral Kexter. Morrison said, "This is your final warning. Order your fleet to withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Kexter laughed, a harsh metallic sound that echoed across the bridge. You dare threaten the core fleet? You're alone against 500 warships and still issuing ultimatums? Your arrogance will be your death. I am not alone, Morrison replied. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Kexter's bridge crew shifted uneasily. Some exchanged glances. A few adjusted their sensors. But the Admiral waved a clawed hand in dismissal. Our scans show only one ship. If your allies exist, they're too cowardly to reveal themselves. You're looking in the wrong place, Morrison said evenly. Then, space changed. Across the system, dark shapes emerged, silent shadows shedding their cloaks. Human warships deactivated their stealth fields behind asteroids, in orbital shadows, or at the edge of the system. Dozens of ships decloaked or dropped from micro-hyperspace, each bearing the unmistakable geometry of Earth's military design. Impossible. Kexter breathed. His 4 eyes widened in disbelief. Where did they come from? We've been here for weeks, Morrison's voice echoed again. Watching, waiting, learning your patrols, monitoring your sensor arrays. Never saw us, because you only looked for what you expected. On the infinite supremacy, Intelligence Officer Vexen scrambled over his console. Admiral, 43 human vessels now detected across the system. Our stealth technology is unlike anything in our archives. They've completely surrounded us. The bridge of the supremacy descended into hushed panic. Kexter clenched his fists. It doesn't matter. 44 ships against 500. The odds are still in our favor. Are they? Morrison replied. The human fleet began to move flawlessly, silently sliding into precise formation like pieces of a machine far larger than any one vessel. They arranged themselves in a 3-dimensional web, forming an encirclement too exact, too coordinated to be chance. No chatter, no hesitation, only purpose. Admiral, they're locking onto our ships, reported Tactical Officer Hextron. Every ship is targeted, Kexter snarled. Attack formation. Attack formation. Destroy every last one of them. The core fleet obeyed. 500 ships unleashed their fury. Particle beams, quantum torpedoes, gravitic warheads, they turned space into a storm of annihilation. A firestorm of energy slammed across the void. aimed with full confidence. But the human fleet had already vanished. Their ships didn't explode. They simply ceased to be where the weapon struck. 1 second, they were there, then gone. The Imperial blasts hit nothing. Then the human ships reappeared. New positions, new vectors, like wraiths dancing between stars. "What is this sorcery?" Kexter growled. Vexen's face drained of color. "Short-range hyperspace microbursts. Admiral, they're blinking in and out of real space faster than our targeting can track. It's teleportation on a tactical scale." Then came the counterattack. Each human ship fired once. Just once. Antimatter. Beams lashed out across space with clockwork precision. Dozens of Imperial vessels were struck simultaneously, each beam cutting through shields and hull like molten razors through ice. 12 Imperial warships died in the first volley. Dreadnought symbols of Imperial conquest broke apart, engulfed in fire. The galaxy's most feared fleet was being carved apart with surgical efficiency. Return fire, reacquire targets. Kexter shouted, voice rising into panic. But every time an Imperial ship tried to respond, the human vessels were already gone, teleporting to new angles before their enemies could fire. The Empire was striking shadows while being dismantled in real time. From the bridge of the Defiance, Morrison watched calmly. The human fleet moved with clockwork unity, not a wasted shot, not a mistimed maneuver. This was not a fleet improvising under pressure. This was execution. Long rehearsed. Relentlessly practiced. "Commander Hart, status report," Morrison asked. Lisa Hart scanned the battle map. Minimal damage on all vessels. "Imperial fleet has lost 60 ships, their formations collapsing." Morrison nodded. The Imperial playbook hadn't changed in 3,000 years. Overwhelm, intimidate, annihilate. But Earth hadn't played by the rules for a long time. "Captain Waters," said Intelligence Officer Sam Parker, "the Infinite Supremacy is attempting to retreat. They're breaking formation." Morrison turned to the tactical display. The enormous flagship, 4 kilometers of brute force, was slowly drifting from the heart of the battlefield. "Target the Supremacy," Morrison ordered. "All ships converge. Bring it down." Human warships flickered into position around the flagship, converging like wolves around a wounded predator. 44 ships locked on. The antimatter beams charged as one, then dash impact. The beams struck. The Supremacy's shields already weakened. The great defenses flared, shuddered and failed. Armor meant to endure planetary sieges gave way beneath precision fire. Beams carved into the vessel's spine, slicing through critical systems like blades. Fleet Admiral Kexter had only a second to understand what had gone wrong. 1 second to realize he had underestimated a species that didn't follow rules. 1 second to know that the Empire's might had been turned against itself. The Infinite Supremacy exploded in a blinding burst, its destruction visible from orbit. The flagship of the core fleet was reduced to plasma and drifting slag. What remained? Of the core fleet fractured, without orders, without leadership. Without hope, the remaining Imperial ships began to surrender or scatter. Panic spread faster than any command. On the Defiance, Morrison stood at ease. The battlefield was silent. In less than an hour, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy had been defeated. "Damage report," Morrison requested. 3 ships reporting. "Minor system failures," Hart replied. "No casualties." "All vessels combat ready." He allowed himself a brief smile. It was done. But it was also just beginning. Word of this battle would spread. And when it reached the worlds under Imperial chains, it would ignite the sparks of revolution. "Lieutenant Rivers, open a channel to all Imperial-controlled systems," Morrison ordered. "Channel open, sir," Don Rivers confirmed. Morrison stepped forward, voice resolute. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. The Galactic Empire's core fleet has been defeated, its flagship destroyed, its power shattered." The message echoed through Imperial networks, across space stations, cities, and colonies. Billions heard him. "To the oppressed we bring hope. To the conquered freedom. To those who wield fear and terror as weapons we bring justice." He paused. Humanity stands for liberty, and we do not stand alone. The screen dimmed. Across the galaxy, imperial rule began to tremble. A new force had arrived, one that could not be broken, bribed, or bent. And the revolution was only beginning.